Hello and welcome to IMPACTability, the Nonprofit Leaders Podcast. This is a show that explores the landscape of the nonprofit organization, big and small, offers some incredibly helpful information and resources, and gives nonprofits a place to share ideas and get advice. Our show is sponsored by Sukup Strategic Solutions, offering a wide variety of services to help nonprofits maximize their impact. We're excited to bring you the stories and advice of leaders in the nonprofit sector to help you succeed in your nonprofit. So let's get started.
Welcome to IMPACTability, the Nonprofit Leaders Podcast. I'm Cheryl Sukup, and I'll be your host for today's episode. We're glad you joined us today. Our episode features a nonprofit leader, Neftali Feliciano from the Cancer Alliance Network. Neftali is the CEO, and I'm excited to have this conversation with him today so we can learn more about his organization and his journey as a nonprofit leader. So Neftali, thank you so much for joining me today as a guest on the show.
No, it's a pleasure. Great to be here.
Great. So can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and the mission of the nonprofit you're currently serving?
Sure. So I'm the CEO here at Cancer Alliance Network. Celebrating 4 years, I think, tomorrow. But Cancer Alliance Network, thank you very much.
Very timely.
We will be celebrating 23 years serving Southwest Florida in mid-October. So we're almost there. But what we do is...
So can I interject for 1 second? I've been
Absolutely.
in Southwest Florida for 23 years, and I have always known about your organization. You had a different name for a while, but it's always been CAN. So it's really interesting that that you started around the same time as I arrived in Southwest Florida. Your organization is just such a, just a pillar of the community. A really important part of our community fabric. So it's great. Congratulations on 23 years and 4 years as the CEO.
Thank you. I thank you for the kind words. Yes, we've always been a local grassroots organization. And really, we were founded from the fact that there were very few resources to help cancer patients go through their treatment journey. So we do help children and adults that are in active cancer treatment with non-medical financial aid and resources and support programs such as wigs, mastectomy bras, prosthetics, cancer support groups, nutrition courses, and really a connection and almost like a concierge to connect with other nonprofits in the area that do things that we don't do. So the core of what we do provide is the financial aid for families that are in a very difficult time and in financial distress.
Yeah, that's been a really important part of what you do. I know because over the years, I personally referred many families to your organization, and it's been really a lifesaver for them. They've been able to access your organization's support for very flexible resources that they haven't been able to access elsewhere. So thank you for all you do in the community. It's so important, and a lot of people don't understand how important what you do is. That flexibility is, I think, everything too. Can I tell you a couple of little stories that I have not shared with you about my experience referring people to your organization? Just to give a couple of little stories. Is that okay with you?
Oh no, absolutely. I love to brag about our team, and I couldn't do it all by myself, that's for sure.
So back when I was an executive director for Families First of Southwest Florida, we were serving children with disabilities and their families. And we had a family whose mom came down with cancer, and what the family really needed was respite care. And your agency was able to support them. They couldn't just have anybody watch their child because their child had special healthcare needs. And that was really a significant need. And so that flexibility of you being able to provide that was huge for that family during that time of crisis for them. So thank you for that. And then also, I had a number of families when I worked at Immokalee Housing and Family Services, um, providing affordable housing. And some of our residents would, encounter, they always were living, at the poverty line, right? So just the simplest thing happening in their life could knock them off kilter because they just lived paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a cancer diagnosis and being ill and not being able to go to work, that just threw some of our residents, and it was more than one resident, we had multiple residents that this occurred with, but they got behind in their bills and they just found it really hard to catch up. And so we were able to refer out for certain things, but like a lot of the agencies that provide support they'll do 1 month of electric, they'll do 1 month of rental assistance. And, once you've gone to them, that's it. Some of them will do more than that, but it just, it depends on the organization, how often that individual or household has gone for assistance. But your agency was able to be really flexible and help in areas where they weren't able to access support from other agencies. And sometimes it takes multiple agencies to get somebody through a difficult time. So that 6-month time frame that you provide, it's amazing too. So I just wanted to share a couple of those little stories because those meant a lot to me as an executive director, being able to refer to your organization. It meant a lot to the people that I was serving that I really cared about. So anyway, thank you again for what you do.
No, thanks for sharing that. I'll definitely bring back those stories to the team. It's what we do is difficult sometimes. That's the reality of it. But it's also amazing that the people that we do help end up being the most generous, full of gratitude, people that you wouldn't even imagine they're going through a very difficult time, and yet they are concerned about others. Really, it's almost like I've I've told our team, like, who really benefited. We helped them with financial aid, but we got our hearts full. We got our cup full of doing something meaningful, something that actually drives a real impact in not only that person's life, but their family as well. So sometimes, we do face the tough, situations, the tough stories. But we also see the flip side, and we see the most beautiful part of humanity. But thanks for sharing those stories, and I will take them back.
Great. All right. Well, let's ask you a little bit more about yourself. So, thinking back on your journey with nonprofits, how did you get started in the nonprofit sector?
Well, I got started as a volunteer. So back in 2016, I was at Morgan Stanley. So I was in financial services, wealth management. And in 2016, my uncle passed away from cancer. And as I was getting to meet, thanks. And I was getting to meet, the management and other employees at Morgan Stanley. I remember the complex regional director. I was like, hey, I think you might be interested in learning more about an organization called Cancer Alliance of Naples. At that time,
the old name,
and yep, that was the old name, and I'll share the reason why we changed it.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
So one conversation led to another, and I began. He was the actual board president for Cancer Alliance of Naples at that time. So I started getting involved, started volunteering, and about a year later, I was asked if I'd consider joining the board as a board member. So I said, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And so then that started my, official service to the organization. So the maximum amount of time you can spend on the board is 2 3-year terms, so 6 years.
Okay.
So I rolled off, and then about, I think maybe nearly a year after I rolled off of the board, there was some changes, and this is like right after the pandemic, and
Hmm.
the board president at that time called me and said, "Hey, Neff, here's a out of the blue question. You could say no, but your name came up a couple times. Would you even be willing to consider joining the organization as the executive director or CEO?" And then I said, I'm a man of faith. I said, let me pray about it. Let me talk to my wife about it because it's a really big difference.
Yeah, it
So
really.
to summarize everything, a couple days later, after plenty of introspection and making sure my wife was on board as well, it just felt like the right thing that I had to do. And
Yeah.
that really started. Actually, it's not tomorrow. It's today's my 4-year anniversary. So 4 years ago,
Congratulations.
I officially came on, and even though I was familiar with the organization, I did have a board
Hmm.
member's perspective. So
Yeah.
once you get into it, then you start learning the nuances, information and details, like the stuff that you find in the weeds versus more of a
Hmm.
board member high level.
Yeah.
And that's how I got in. But after 10 years in financial services, um, if you were asked me 4 years and a month ago, I'd be like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. What do you mean? I love the organization, but uh, I'm in financial services. There's no reason or no desire to get out of that career. So definitely not the traditional way of coming into the role.
I think every executive director or CEO of a nonprofit should serve on one or more boards. I mean, I think multiple boards because so many boards operate so differently. So you can get a variety of different experiences. But I think it helps to sit um, in the board member seat and understand that role. And it's rare that a board member ends up experiencing what it's like to be the nonprofit CEO. But I'm sure that gives you some unique perspective. So I know I was thinking of asking this a little bit later, but I think I'm going to ask it right now because you just said that. What would be one piece of advice that you would give to um, other nonprofit board members now that you've had both positions and you've had an opportunity to see what it's like um, in both roles? What would you give them as advice?
Advice for a board member?
What advice would you
Um,
give to nonprofit board members?
okay, so I'll sprinkle. I'll touch on a couple different things because it's not
Okay.
like it's not a cookie cutter answer that could actually
Hmm.
do justice in giving advice. But a couple of the things that come to mind would be uh, as a board member, you're there because you're passionate about the mission. So above and beyond anything else, you're passionate, and that's how you even got to that. Now, every board member has either time, talent, or treasure, or a combination of those. So
Hmm.
uh, every board member has to know like what are the areas that you could truly leverage for the benefit of the mission, and we want to expand that mission and basically do more good, do more of it within the community. So
Always.
that's why you're there. Unfortunately, we have, and I've served on different boards. Sometimes you do have board members that are there for maybe a slightly different reason, like it looks great on your resume, it looks good within the philanthropic social circles, but that's not necessarily, the right approach. So
Mhm.
know what your talent inventory is and dedicate the commensurate amount of time so that you could actually like say that, hey, I was a part of that. I helped drive and push that forward. I would also say as a
Yeah,
board
that's
member,
good. That's good. That's really good insight because so often there are board members, a certain number of board members sitting on many boards that um, may have every good intention, but they don't have the time. They're not willing to give philanthropically. And so they're taking up a seat. And, there's work that needs to be done to engage every board member and to ensure that every board member is supported. And if you're not going to do your job, really shouldn't be on the board. So
Yeah,
I think knowing your I liked the words that you used, talent inventory. I like that, because sometimes board members, maybe they don't have a ton of time, but they can contribute in really meaningful ways if they just look at their talent inventory, like you said.
absolutely. Another aspect to consider is, as a board member, you are one part of a group. So whether that board is 11 people strong, 13, 17, I've heard as high as 60, like 63 or something like that. Usually your Chamber of
Yeah,
Commerce have the really big
80,
boards, right?
80. There's a nonprofit in
80 or
Miami
like
that I know of. That's 80. There's another nonprofit that we recently talked to that has 120. Can you imagine that size board?
it probably has to be like a United Way type, or like, something that just they're tasked with distributing so much funding, so they have to have representation in so many parts of their community. So like I can understand that, but to manage that, I mean, imagine it. It's like herding cats. It's a difficult
Mhm.
job to do.
Yeah.
And I would say it's a very delicate. Anything dealing with board dynamics is delicate, like in governance and stuff, but that's a
Yeah.
different topic. But as a board member, I would also say that you are one voice out of the group, and there are going to be differences of opinion. There are going to be differences of
Mhm.
personality types, and some
For sure.
may rub you wrong. But they're all
Mhm.
there for the same reasons that you are, in terms of passionate about the mission. And I will say that there could be differences of opinion, but once the board votes, then that's it. Like you're all on the
Yeah.
same page. Any reservations you had against that vote, if you're in the minority, it doesn't matter anymore. It's all for the
That's
greater
right.
good of the organization. It's not like this is not it's not a personality game. It's not a popularity or who could exert the most influence within a board. But
Yeah.
once that decision is made by the board, falling in line with that and showing showing unity within the community
Yeah.
is incredibly important, because all of these board members are leaders within their respective social circles. And
Mhm.
you've heard there's a saying, and I'm bad at sayings, but it's something like, um, a lie or bad news has traveled the world 5 times before the truth, or before good news has woken up, or something like that. So like,
I don't
forgive
know
me
that
for
saying.
butchering that. But I just heard
It's
it. I
okay.
heard it last week. I heard that last week, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's pretty cool. So from that perspective, that is very helpful, because when several board members don't basically abide by that principle,
Yeah.
then now you start changing the real focus of the board into things that, like, it's like, hey, we only have a limited time to meet every month. Let's
Mhm.
use that time for the highest value use.
Yeah.
The only other thing I could possibly say would be, the board perspective um, is an oversight perspective. Like, your
Mhm.
fiduciary is to the organization,
Yeah.
and the executive director, CEO, and the staff, that's a completely different perspective. So,
Mhm.
the board, an optimal board using best practices, they stay within their purview, and
Yep.
then the staff and internal team stays in theirs. And then
Mhm.
at the top, bridging the gap, or saddling both sides, you have the CEO that speaks in a
Mhm.
unified voice for everything internal and operations. And then you have the board president, which,
Yep.
the CEO, I would talk to our president and executive committee, and then they make decisions on the board side. I don't unilaterally go over, cross that
Mhm.
imaginary line, and then basically usurp any of their responsibilities. So I think just understanding that there are two different perspectives
Yeah.
And together they make the complete picture.
Yeah.
But board members should not be willing to jump into the weeds on the day-to-day operations because that's not the role.
It's so funny. You evolved from a small grassroots organization, and a lot of nonprofits start out that way, and they don't have paid staffs, and so the board becomes accustomed to managing the operations of the organization. You might have some board members who are really just on the board in a governance role, but that
Yeah.
board has to do both things, practice governance and then also be running the nonprofit. And so that shift to evolve into a professionally managed organization can be really challenging for some organizations. And that confusion over the role of the board can permeate the organization for years and years to come afterwards. So I think that's really good advice. The other thing is that as a consultant, I see so often the fallout of not doing what you talked about in the middle, and as the second thing, as your second tip, which is to make sure that once the board votes and there's been consensus, even if you didn't agree, you didn't vote the way the rest of the board voted, you still are responsible as a board member to, as you said, abide by what the board has decided. They took action, and you're a member of the board, and you need to now support that if you're going to stay on the board. And to not do that is one of the most common reasons that I find conflict on boards. And that conflict can really derail a nonprofit in so many ways. You talked about lack of focus, but it can get much more significantly dysfunctional as a result of these types of conflicts, especially if it happens repeatedly. So I think that's one of the most important things that you can give as a piece of advice to board members. I'm really glad that you brought that up. That's a good one, a really good one.
And I don't want to make like, one statement fits all situations, but you did bring up a great point that most nonprofits start off grassroots without paid staff. It's a core group of founding members, and if they get a phone call for somebody that needs help, for their respective mission, everybody is scrambling, trying to make something happen. And then as that mission grows, as they are more successful in raising funds to support the mission, then they bring on paid staff. So there is a transition period, and I think it's probably unrealistic to think that no nonprofit goes through those transitions. It's just, okay, once you make the transition, then like there has to be, I'd probably say over communication to make sure that like, are we spot checking ourselves? Like, okay, are we doing everything right? Because when I first came on, one of the first things I did was I reached out to as many of the founding members of Cancer Alliance in Naples as I could to grab coffee, lunch, have them come into the office. I just wanted to understand their perspective
That's a smart thing
15,
to do.
18 years ago. Because if you know where you came from, then you know where you're going. So I wanted, and I still want to remain faithful and truthful to our core mission. So it's one thing to know the names of the founding members. It's another thing to actually talk to them and for them to tell you all the stories. So once an organization does establish itself, there is going to be that transition period. But whenever you are dealing with the board side of things, I always say I've come to learn that a delicate approach is definitely it goes further. Drastic changes to any board has too many implications, and the majority of them are negative. Now you could ruin the organizational culture. You could alienate, very influential people. I think that you could basically cause immunity. I'm not speaking from experience, but I have been involved in enough organizations where, like, you could see dysfunction when it's happening, And you could
Yeah.
learn from that and say, well, hold on a minute. What is the best practice for that situation? And then, you're like, okay, note to self. You might want to tread lightly and carefully and very respectfully, because the
Hmm.
fallout, what does it truly or ultimately affect? The mission. And if we're
Right.
all here for the
That's
mission,
absolutely.
if we keep the mission as front and center, I believe that people, it doesn't matter if they're type A, it doesn't matter if they're like gung ho, people will lay aside their differences because it is
Mhm.
about the mission. It's not about somebody else.
One would
So
hope. One
that,
would
that
hope that
transition
that would
part.
be the case. One would hope that they would put
Yeah.
everything else aside for the mission.
Yeah.
You're supposed to. I mean, it's a duty. It's a duty of every board member, and it's a duty of an executive director or CEO of a nonprofit too. You have to put the organization first. Um, and sometimes that's to your own detriment, right? But that's what we're called upon to do
Yep.
as nonprofit leaders: is stay focused on the mission and what's going to be most beneficial for that nonprofit to fulfill that mission. So great advice, wonderful wisdom. All right, now we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with you shortly.
One of the biggest challenges facing nonprofits today is securing grants. Where do I find information on grants? How do I write a grant? How do I submit the grant? And of course, the dreaded midnight deadlines. At Soukup Strategic Solutions, we have a team of expert grant writers with years of experience writing hundreds of grants for nonprofits just like yours. Visit our website today at soukupstrategicsolutions.com and schedule a free consultation about your grant writing needs. That's SOUKUP strategicsolutions.com. Let's work together and to bring in grant funding to fuel your mission.
Welcome back. I'm speaking with Neftali Feliciano from Cancer Alliance Network. Nef, let's continue our conversation. What inspires you every day? I mean, you come in, some of the stories that you hear are probably very heart-wrenching. You mentioned that you have a personal connection to the mission with your uncle. I feel like so many of us have some connection to your mission. Maybe not in Southwest Florida, but so many of us have a history with cancer. It's just so prevalent in our society. So I feel like we've all been touched in some way. I mean, I remember as a kid, like I was a teenager. I worked with a woman in one of my early jobs who was young. She had young children. This was in an early learning program, and her children were in the early learning program.
Okay.
And she came down with brain cancer, and she died. And I remember how much that affected me, all of us. But the tragedy of that, and we all were there trying to help care for her family as they were going through this. And then the loss for them was devastating. But for all of us, we all felt that. And so that's an early experience for me. But my mom has, a history with cancer too. When I was a kid, she had uterine cancer, and that was just something I grew up with. It just seemed like it was just something. My mom went to the hospital and she came back and she was fine. But she's also a breast cancer survivor later in her life. And so I watched that transpire in her treatment, and how all of that affected her was very different from what she experienced as a younger person. So I don't know. I think a lot of us can relate to your mission. How do you do it every day? You and your staff come in and you hear all of these things and you're helping all these people, but there's all of these really heart-wrenching stories that are attached to it. And it just feels like everybody has some kind of connection.
I mean, it's a great question. I think from a personal level, I know that it was not my doing that I ended up here, right? So I'm a man of faith,
Yeah.
and I feel
Mm-hmm.
that there was definitely a divine opening that paved the way for me to be here.
From a faith perspective, part of what inspires you every day is your faith. You feel like you were called to do this. This is something that is divinely inspired. in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I, I, I occasionally tell in certain conversations, so I'm doing the same work that I did as a wealth management advisor. The only thing is, I don't have a financial instrument or product or fund to offer at the very end. What I have is, a need. And with cancer, you don't have to convince anybody that cancer is hard, that it's tough,
Hmm.
that it's negative, that it's bad.
Yeah.
And at least from my personality type and how I see things, um, I cannot also go out there with with that type of story where it's like, what was it back in the '90s? Is it Sally Struthers? There are these these really tough commercials to watch of a child
No, yeah, I remember
in
those. Yeah.
Africa, or in other
Yeah.
countries, and you're like you're seeing abject poverty. Like for me, I
Mhm.
can't do that. So
Yeah.
I have to. I feel that you gain more support by focusing on the
Hmm.
positive because it's so obvious that cancer is difficult. But
Yeah.
there's way more that you could celebrate to life,
I love
and
that.
it,
That's great.
and then know that you're not alone. And we don't want
Hmm.
any cancer patient. We don't want anybody to think that they have to go through that journey alone. And that's in part why we exist.
What is the biggest surprise you had in the last few months?
I think maybe I guess maybe a challenge that's been a surprise is, as it relates to funding, maybe just not seeing as many funding opportunities from foundations that will
Yeah.
support a mission like ours. Because
Hmm.
when that happens, for the uninitiated, it means that we either have to do more fundraising events, which is very
Hmm.
taxing when you have a small team.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so much that goes
Yeah.
behind even the simplest events, and
Hmm.
then it's the other segment, which is private donations from individuals.
Hmm.
So always working to get new relationships, make new connections. Like it just puts more pressure on those things. So maybe a
Yeah.
challenge that's been a surprise is maybe not as many foundations maybe this upcoming cycle. So trying to
Yeah.
figure out like, well, what do we do to maybe get out ahead of it? Um, so
Yeah.
that's
And
kind of what
so
I
tell me,
see.
yeah, tell me how, like, that's one of the other questions I was going to ask you is, what is the biggest challenge you have with your nonprofit leadership role right now? And how are you going to overcome it? So, if this is one
Yeah.
of the big challenges you face, what are some things that you think that you and your team can do to overcome this challenge?
So when you have a very cost intensive program like we do,
Hmm.
last year our budget was $650,000 for financial aid.
Hmm.
That's not like a regular program where it might cost us a couple $1,000s a year.
Yeah.
So the the challenge comes down to diversification of revenue streams.
Hmm.
And there's basically three main buckets: individual, private donors, private foundations, and grants. And then there are fundraising events. So
Yep.
events can also be dicey because to do like a gala or a signature event, it it costs quite a bit of money. And when you
Yeah.
start adding everything up, you have to walk a fine line between overspending and then not being able to
Hmm.
reach that fundraising goal. Because you could
Yeah.
there are organizations that spend quite a bit, but they may be more mature. They may have a very large donor base. So they're
Yeah.
always going to make, let's say, 2 to 3x what they invest in costs.
Hmm.
When you don't have some of those things, you have to be a little bit more prudent on where you make those expenses because you also have to have an event that's fun, and it has to be an event
Yeah.
that some of your bigger supporters and donors will want to come to. So like
Right.
if you go
That's
too
that's a
prudent,
really that's a really challenging thing in Southwest Florida because in season there's an event like every night, and
yeah,
somehow yours has to stand out. And as a smaller organization, just the like figuring out like creativity wise, what are we going to do that hasn't been done over and over and over again,
Yep.
to keep people excited about the event, excited about joining us, excited about coming back next year.
So
It's pretty challenging.
something. It is, and this is something that for the last 2 years, I think we're starting to really come into our own. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
couple years ago, I said, "Hey, um, you know, gala, that's not our thing. That's not our game." I said, if we
Yeah.
do a gala, there's so many people that come to us and they say, your events are fun and they're casual. And I'm tired of
Mm-hmm.
going to galas. I go because they're
Yeah.
like, they have their reasons, but we don't want to get in the tux. It's also hard for women to get completely dolled up if they're working professionals as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that we have said is like, okay, we're going to find our own voice and we're going to experiment, but we're not going to take huge risks in terms of the cost of the event because we don't have a guarantee that we're going to raise a very large amount. So over the last 3 years, we've reduced our fundraising expenses for our annual event by about 70%.
That's
And
amazing. That's
which is
wonderful.
which
How have
is
your donors responded to that?
uh, they haven't noticed any difference in terms of the experience. It's
That's so
just
great.
so we have an event called Yoga Can, and it literally is a 50-minute practice or session with a
Mm-hmm.
yogi and a couple hundred people out on the lawn. We've done it at
Mm-hmm.
Baker Park because it's beautiful there. But
Yeah.
over the last 4 years, I've basically stripped everything that detracts from just a yoga session. There's no live auction, there's no raffle, there's no selling of merch. There are so many things that we've not done again. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a session, and there's a very soft ask. It's very emotional, but it's one of the community's favorite events because you're purely there for the mission, and that essence is not fighting. There's no distractions for why people are there for. And
Yeah.
I've kind of
It's
taken
all
that
about the
concept
mission.
to, yeah, I've taken that concept to our other, our signature event, and
Yep.
also finding the venue. It's something that probably doesn't get said, but the way I see it is for the majority of nonprofits that have galas, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest winners are the hotels and the venues. It's
They
really
do make a lot of
expensive.
money on it. It is very
Like
expensive.
if
It's huge.
between
It's a huge
between
expense.
beverage, it is between beverage and alcohol. That's a big
Mm.
chunk. Between the venue
Yeah.
and the space and the rentals, huge chunk. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you start looking at decor, it's incredibly expensive. So that's where we've begun to focus our energy on just making sure that we have the right committee
Yeah.
of passionate people that want to make our fundraising event as fun as possible and as successful as we can because it's going back to the mission. Like I'm like a
Yeah.
broken record here. Like if our mission doesn't
Well, no, that's
benefit,
okay.
we
That's
can't
good.
do
You're
it.
saying the same thing. Mission, 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 which is good. You should be saying that.
So
Neff,
we're
what are you guys going to do
experimenting.
for I love that. I love that experimentation. What are you going to do this year for your signature event?
So this year, our theme is living the dream because we kind of
Mm-hmm.
live in paradise.
Yeah,
But we're
that's
living the
nice.
dream, and
And living,
because
and living, like, because
and
people
living,
are cancer survivors. That's so good. I love that
and
play.
we're living the dream. But there are people that are not able to because they are in cancer treatment. So
Yeah.
we're basically we're gathering here because we can. We get to do
Hmm.
this, and we get to do
Yeah.
this for the mission. So our that's our theme. I believe it's going to be like almost like a Florida like decor, old
Nice.
Florida, West Palm Beach type. So
Hmm.
it'll be colorful. We're having it at Kalia Bay, which is a beautiful high-rise community. I mean, it's impeccably manicured. and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
poolside, and it's going to
Nice.
be a
See,
ton of
that's
fun.
different. People will remember that. That's
Yep,
different.
and
Still upscale,
people
but
have
different.
it, it's upscale. I've said a couple times. I said, look, very wealthy people also like to be relaxed. Like
It's
you know,
true.
if you're retired and you're not wearing a suit and tie every day because you have to, trust me, they
Hmm.
would rather show up in beach shorts, Tommy Bahama shirt, and a colorful hat or something like that. Versus being in a tux.
I
So
had a
we're
board
we're, we're
member.
experimenting.
Let me tell you this. I had a board member who said to me, I'm never wearing socks again. So whatever you ask me to do, as long as I don't have to wear socks, I'll consider it. But if it involves socks, I'm not doing it. I don't have to wear socks anymore. I live in Florida now, and it's the lifestyle I
Hey,
want to live now that I'm retired.
yep,
So yeah, I
they
get it.
learned it. So last year we had our event at Kalia Bay as well. One of the
Hmm.
challenges, we've had events in different venues every year, which is very challenging because it's not the same place year after year. So then
Hmm.
everything changes. So you're almost coming up with everything from
Yeah,
scratch versus, let's say we were to do it at
yeah,
a very nice hotel, the ballroom, we do a gala. It's basically the same template every year, other than the
hmm,
decor and the theme. So,
yeah,
but this is something that we're willing to do, and the
hmm,
larger nonprofits are not because they have something that works for them. So, like, more power
yeah.
to you, take advantage of it. But we don't have that luxury, so we have to. So, last year, we were having a team session, and we were thinking of like, okay, what's next year's theme going to be? And the meeting, the first maybe 10, 15 minutes, it was almost a deluge of, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, like all these things. And then I just kind of paused and I said, okay, I now have a full inventory of the things that we can't do. But what can we do? What is it that we could do that nobody else can? And I said, enough of the what we can't or what we don't have. Let's only concentrate on this. And I guarantee you, within 5 to 10 minutes, the team dynamic, the conversation shifted, and it exploded with ideas because we were now focused on like this is within reach and this is what we
Yeah.
can do and we could do it better than anyone else. So like don't underestimate the power of taking the shackles off. Because
Yeah.
I've said before, well, what if we had $10 million? Could
Hmm.
we help every cancer patient in the entire region? I said no. So what if we had $50 million? Well, what if we had $100 million? I said, you name the number. We will get to the point where we still don't have enough. So it's no longer a
Hmm.
valid idea. So let's not use that as a scapegoat. Let's focus on what we can do. Just being really deliberate and proactive on trying to meet as many new people, warm introductions from our board members, your social circles. We're experimenting with small format dinners where
Hmm. That's great.
it's a very small risk in terms of dollar amount for us, but
Yeah.
even with a very soft ask for 40 to 50 or 60 people that are by invite only, we may
Yeah.
be able to raise enough money just to break even. But the purpose is not that. The purpose
It's
is
friend
we
raising.
want to bring community leaders, business owners,
Hmm.
potential philanthropists. We want you to hear about our mission. We speak for about 5 or 6 minutes, nothing else. It's just dinner with a bunch of community leaders, business owners, and
Hmm.
physicians. And if our mission resonates with you, we'd love to see where you see yourself fitting in, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. Let's have a discussion within the next couple weeks so that we can see how you might envision yourself fitting in, and then like we're happy for the support. So we're trying to do those, one in Lee County and one in Naples every year,
Hmm.
um,
Great.
because if we're a nonprofit organization, but that's just a tax designation, right? Like it's not a
Hmm.
business model. And
It's true.
before I came to CAN, I worked for a nonprofit called TIAA CREF. They do all
Hmm.
the retirement plans for a lot of
Yeah.
universities. It was founded by Andrew Carnegie. And they were making like $52 billion a year as a not-for-profit. They were operating very profitably. So I
Yeah.
always remind our board and remind our team that, like, hey, we have to be on the cutting edge of being proactive in sharing our mission, because if we don't have enough awareness and visibility, then nothing else works.
It's true.
So like it's just going back to
So,
that. Oh, and this is a perfect explanation of why we changed from Cancer Alliance of Naples to
oh
Cancer
yeah, you
Alliance
were going to
Network.
tell me that story. All right, perfect.
And it was when I came on, when I was trying to network in Fort Myers and Lee County, they would say, "Oh, you're Cancer Alliance of Naples. Oh, you guys have plenty of money. You guys are in Naples. No need like."
Hmm.
So then that's a barrier. When I was in
Yeah.
Naples, and I'd say, "Yeah, we also support Lee County." They're like, "Well, that's not our community. Nothing against Lee County, but we're passionate about
Hmm.
our community." So then we
Yeah.
were getting some, barriers to entry on both counties. So
Yes.
I said, "What's the core reason why it was Cancer Alliance Naples?" I said, "There must be an alliance." I said, "Shouldn't we say that alliance should eventually we should try to knit it together into a network?" So we discussed that for a couple months, and the board really saw the need to being a little bit more inclusive of the region, because we have children and
Hmm.
adults in Collier and Lee County, but we also
Yeah.
help children only in Hendry and Glades County, which are rural
Yeah.
counties. But when there's a diagnosis, they usually seek treatment at Golisano Children's Hospital, and
Yeah.
Golisano is one of our referrers. So when they have
Yeah.
a family that's in financial distress, they're reaching out to us, but they're
Yeah.
basically now living in Lee County. So
Hmm.
that's the reason why Cancer Alliance of Naples became Cancer Alliance Network. And I'd be remiss if I didn't explain that before our time is
Ah, I'm
over.
glad that you did. I'm glad that you did. All right. Well, we are about out of time. So I want to say thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find you online, Neff?
Oh my gosh, I'm horrible with with handles and stuff like that. If I don't get to do too much online, but obviously, canceralliancenetwork.org is our
Hmm.
organization. And we have our social media, which is named the same for Instagram and also Facebook. So I definitely invite you to follow us on social media.
Can people connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yes, yes. Thanks for mentioning LinkedIn. Occasionally, I will do an
Great.
article. Besides, it's a
Nice.
LinkedIn /Neftali Feliciano. Uh, hopefully you guys could put that in the notes description, because I'm really
We
bad at
will.
that, so I
We'll def
apologize.
That's okay. If you want to connect with Neff and learn more about him and Cancer Alliance Network, you can visit him online. There'll be information in the show notes. Neff, thank you so much for joining us today. You shared a lot of really great wisdom. Thank you very much for your leadership. And thank you so much for all you do every day at CAN.
Oh, thanks for having me. Pleasure to speak with you. It was a lot of fun, and for all who watch, I hope you can take something that may be of value to your respective organization or in your journey, your leadership journey.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We love to hear from our listeners, so please reach out and let us know what you liked and what else you'd like to hear. You can find our email address and links to our social accounts in the show notes. If you enjoyed hearing from today's guest, we encourage you to reach out and connect with them. See the show notes for their contact information. To get more great content in your inbox each month, sign up for our newsletter at impactability.live. That's impactability.live. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app. That way you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. Finally, we'd be grateful if you would give us a positive review or a rating so that your peers in the nonprofit industry can find us as well. From all of us at Impactability, thanks for listening, and thank you for all you do to make the world a better place through your nonprofit.